Hello, everyone. Welcome to another month of the Chichester Chats. Of course, I am Phil. There's Lilith, and of course, the man himself, the man who wrote the greatest battle of the West Coast Avengers ever, Mr. DG Chichester. Hello, sir.
You, cover copy does not lie. So we know this is a fact. It says it right there, and I'm
Exactly.
happy to take credit for it, co-credit for it. In truth,
Co-credit, yes.
it was co-written, but it was an amazing accomplishment, and that's why I never returned to the West Coast Avengers, frankly, because you really you've hit the
You leave on
apex
a high
really
note, like you're George
right at
Costanza.
right at exactly right. It's the Costanza chats now. We've moved on to it. It's
Yes. We love Seinfeld. But yeah, no, this was another fill-in. So I'm assuming what an editor came to you and said, "Hey, we need a fill-in for West Coast Avengers this month," or
no. This was the hard Scrabble time. This was nobody wants to hire you. This is this is you're on staff, and desperately, not desperately, but desirously wanting to move into something else. To try to exercise the writing skills, pick up some extra green. On staff editors were not paid well. I'm sure they're probably still not paid well, all in comparison. So there were a lot of there was a lot of talented nepotism, going on. Certainly, if you look at the credits, there's a lot of editors who are writing things, assistant editors who are writing things, using the ability, using the fact that they were inside the walls to try to also open things up, and that's what I wanted to do. Certainly, I'd come out of film school, took the job at Marvel for various different reasons, which we might have touched on, but I wanted to get to writing, both from a financial point of view and also because that's ultimately what I wanted to do, and so, but I wasn't confident enough to do it on my own. And Margaret Clark, who was one of the other editors at Epic, and we had struck up a good relationship, a good friendship. We would later date for a long while, but this predated that. And But we said, maybe if we start writing together, we can um, you know get more people interested, because she had a certain group of people she was connected with, I had a certain people I was connected with, and so we just started pitching things, and we pitched a lot of strange things, Thundercats. There was a group of, like, there's another comic cartoon tie-in that we pitched, something Defenders of the Universe or something, had like Mandrake the Magician and a bunch of other ones. So this was written as a fill-in, with a lot of desperate clawing at Mark Grunwald's office and Howard Mackey, who was the assistant. And, can you give us a shot? Can you give us a shot? Can you give us a shot? Here's an idea. Here's an idea. Here's an idea. Um, and 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 so finally, yeah. Probably more just to get rid of us. The idea was accepted and written, and then put in the drawer as a pure fill-in. So there was a chance that this might never, ever, ever run. And so the fact that it did run meant that there was a blip in the schedule at some point, and then it got pulled out. And uh, you could see, if you've read the story, there's a couple of uh, there's at least a page, I think, and then a couple of panels that are really, were seems like they were added after the fact, like the kind of setup flashback from, I think, Wonder Man or something like that.
yeah, yeah. That's why I didn't know how planned it was, because yeah, it's like a first page, and I think the
Yeah,
last page is just like framing device. It's like, okay, well, this is taking place during current continuity, but meanwhile, Wonder Man's just sitting on the Quinjet reminiscing. It's like, oh, remember when
e-
we really were a team?
exactly. Which is an awkward thing, but that wasn't something that we had written, and
Mm.
you get the sense, or at least I do, umpteen years later, uh, both for practical purposes and writers who are kind of learning to do what they want to do. This is so plot driven. This is like a through line of just action, 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 action. Right? There's nothing here except propelling the story forward. So it's easy for editors. They don't have to worry about, well, geez, you're mucking about with so and so's relationship, and the regular writer John Byrne or whatever, he's not going to like that. All we did was have a goofball adventure, and then I'm sure at that point, Mark Grunwald and Howard Mackey didn't even come to us for those framing devices. I think they probably just wrote them on their own.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. You know, Grunwald was very continuity focused and stuff. Yeah, I could see that. But I think we've discussed this before. But it's like villains are. I mean, are they kind of difficult because it's like, yeah, you really can't mess with any of the ongoing stuff or anybody's relationship. It's like Iron Man has his own book. You really can't, change much with him.
Yeah, I think that there's different ways to approach it. Where if you're in a good relationship with the regular creative team, when Greg Wright would do some fill-in issues, really kind of, on Daredevil, I'd hand off certain things to him because I was busy with something else, or I was setting up Elektra, or different things where I wanted to get ahead of stuff, because he and I had just a great creative and friendly relationship. I didn't care what he did, in a way. I knew he was going to treat everything with respect and put it in the right place. And he would even say, I want to do this. Is that going to be okay? And we'd like, great. Because the other half of my brain working, the better half of my brain working in service, to a story. A fill-in issue like this is more the editorial pure play of a smart editor setting things up for ongoing success. At some point, something is going to go wrong with the schedule, right? On an ongoing book that you have to kind of deliver on every month, something's going to go wrong. The package is going to be delivered on time. In those days, we had packages that would come through the mail or FedEx. A creator would just sometimes drop the ball. Somebody would get sick. Act of God, whatever. So you had to plan ahead and just have this stuff sitting there. So from a creative point of view, I think they're, if you can just have fun with the characters, that's all you want to do. And that's what we were trying to, that's all you have to do, rather. And I think that's what we were trying to do here, was have fun with the characters, treat them right, because Mark would slap us if if we didn't. And we tried, and we I assume succeeded, since they bought the story. But that you're not going to set up something that, well, when I get the book, I'll pay off on all this. I'm not going to get the book. I'm not going to get this character out of this. But you might demonstrate certain things of how you handle a character, or maybe you unpack something that you get to then leverage more later, because you demonstrated that you could play in the world, you could play in the with the characters, and for myself and Margaret, this was one of the bigger first times we were playing with the real characters, right? Thundercats, who cares? Whatever the no, I'm not saying, but I'm saying from continuity point. I mean, I worked
from a Marvel standpoint. Yeah,
Lilith, I worked at Epic for a number of years, and we did some substantial work with substantial creators and big names and big books and well produced, comics and groundbreaking stuff. I would say nobody cared on the Marvel side. Nobody cared. Nobody knew what the hell we were doing. It wasn't a Marvel Universe title. So in the same way, Thundercats is a fun property. I even remember, gosh, I wish I could remember the name of that book. I'll have to look it up later. The other cartoon mixed together Flash Gordon, Mandrake.
Was it Defenders of the Earth or something like that?
That was it. Yeah.
Yes, I remember that cartoon. Yeah,
right. Thank you, Phil. Yes. Defenders of the Earth. So short-lived but fun to work with.
Yeah.
Nobody cared, right? But West Coast Avengers, right? You're dealing with a lot of primo characters, so you've got to perform.
Wonder Man excluded. I'm kidding.
Well, Wonder
How dare you?
Got to show. I will be shocked. I will be shocked if Yes, if his show does not pick up on the storyline, I guarantee you that we were going to see that the events of this
The
West Coast
greatest
Avengers
battle
13,
he was ever in. Of
yeah,
course, they're gonna pick this
it's
up.
got to be referenced, right? It's got to come through. And but so I think there's you could feel like you're not advancing something, but you could also just have a lot of fun with it. And I think that in our goofy, multiple referenced what was going on in the world way, we had fun. We ran with it. We obviously fell in love in the strange way, maybe too much, with Pym's little Pym particle things and playing with all this the
As you do,
resizing of
Pym
stuff.
particles are fun, man.
Pym particles are fun, right? We'd all love some Pym particles in the
That's
in
what the
house.
character was at the time. It's like,
That's
he
exactly
didn't have
right.
a costume
Dr.
identity.
Pym!
He
Pager
just,
Right.
Dr. Pym!
just pulled
Right.
stuff out of his pocket
just-
and
it's-
enlarged it. Yeah.
It's like a bag of wonders. It's it's a little Felix the Cat thing going on there. Just pull.
So
pull
I
out
always
whatever
feel
you
like
got.
a fill-in issue can go one of two ways. Either you do a bottle issue, or you just go out and just have a fun adventure. Like, I feel like those are pretty much the only two approaches.
What
to
would
a
be the
fill-in.
difference between the two? What do you mean by the bottle adventure?
Well, they're just
versus...
in like one location and everybody's talking and having shawarma. You know?
Okay. All right. I could see this as
Whereas,
almost like being...
you know, I like the fun approach where they go out and just have an inconsequential adventure.
Right. And that's kind of what this is. Even though this is the greatest battle ever, you could have...
It's not hard to do with West Coast Avengers. I'm just saying.
The other cover copy was the most inconsequential adventure ever, but that didn't play as well in focus groups.
Yeah,
so they went with
marketing
the
didn't
greatest.
like that.
Yeah, marketing didn't go with that one. But yeah, I mean that's it, right? From you turn the page, it's like page one, forget the fill-in intro, right? It's by page two, they're all over it, right? Confronting the Defiler and it was, man, there was obviously a sale on lumber that week, right? The Defiler, his group's corruption. It's just
It's like, it was the 80s. Leave me alone.
the 80s and the 90s. Yeah, you're just all into it.
No, I like the character, but there's like one page. I think it's page 12. I know this is a Chichester page because it's just pun after pun after pun. It's like Hawkeye shoots a net arrow. He's like, "Oh, this will net us some results or something." I'm just like, "That's a Chichester page." It has to be.
Well, there was always a lot of back. When we worked together, there was definitely a. At that point, for this book, for other things later on, it would change a little bit. But there was always a vetting process. We were extraordinarily fair with each other in the sense of it wasn't like one person plot it and the other person script it, or I would script 3 pages and then she would script 3 pages. It was sitting down and kind of going over every single thing. So somebody would say, here's a line, here's a thought, and then we'd vet it back and forth. I don't know if it was the most efficient way, but it was a good partnership, to play that stuff out, and definitely thinking through even the rock band stuff and what's going to come out of Pym's particles and all that stuff was played out as a writing partnership. So I certainly learned a lot working with her on even something like this.
No, the only thing I was missing, I was like, "Oh, where's our origin for the Defiler, man? Where's this guy come from?" I know it was like
It's not
another
the 2000s. We don't need an origin for everything.
Well,
No, but like back in the 80s, they give you like one page. It's like, "Oh, I come from another dimension, and I just feed on all these other
We're gonna
universes
trust our audience. It's fine.
and such." See,
I mean,
DG
I don't-
Chichester trusts you guys to be smart, unlike other
No
creators.
anvils needed.
I don't want to give away any spoilers or take too much credit, but I do want to say, a defiling character, another dimension, dragging people into it. I don't want to say that Stranger Things, read the story and moved in that direction with Vecna, but I again have to sort of say it probably was an inspiration for.
We'll start the rumor. We don't
You
care.
know,
Get us in a shit.
so you may ultimately see in the second part of the Stranger Things season 4 a reference to the Defiler. It might happen,
You're not fixed.
saying-
Hire DJ.
Yeah.
Make this right.
It's an interesting, almost editorial point though you make that wasn't a request, as we put the story forward. We were very fledgling at this point, although we'd later become way too pretentious for our own good. We'd flip to the other direction, in overthinking everything. This was just such pure play. juggling of plot events, setting up a story that wasn't going to get in the way of editorial, but also juggling so many characters out of the gate. Maybe the Thundercats pitch and the Defenders of the Earth pitch experience was helpful, but I would not recommend a big group book as kind of one of your big forays out of the gate. Before that, we had done most of the things we had pitched had been, I would say, one or two characters, and the things we had actually sold had probably been one or two characters. The Solo Avengers story we had done, which was an 8-page story, 12-page story at most, and the Justice story we had done for the New Universe were eminently solo adventures, and so to suddenly go in, you've got 8, 9, characters plus a villain plus this plus that. Maybe it was good. Maybe that was good to go in on the deep end.
And I know it's a one and done, and it's like kind of like a big battle scene. But was there any like one Avenger where you're like, you know what, I kind of liked writing this character more than the other ones. I would be interested in maybe doing something more with this character.
Obviously, it's Pym. Obviously.
Yeah, obviously it's Pym. Obviously.
He could have redeemed Hank Pym.
I did. I do remember liking Pym a lot, and I do remember, even though we start off, this is kind of goofy and the thing that's been set up for him, but we couldn't change that, midway through. But I do remember liking that quite a bit, but not in a way of suddenly saying, "Oh, geez, we're gonna pitch a Hank Pym, storyline or mini series." I think we were just so happy to sell through a story and get it accepted and get paid for it and be able to say, all right, we did this one, and then bug whatever Howard or Mark's, probably more Howard's strategy to kind of get rid of us. It only became the double down. Well, you bought one, do you want to buy another one now? So it wasn't like he chased us away. It was more like, oh, this guy's a sucker, and he's opened the door to us.
Do you remember getting a lot of notes on this?
Not so much. I don't remember. I remember, for example, many more notes on that 8-page Solo Avengers story, which I think I mentioned before in the past. Always being shocked and just so pleasantly surprised how much time Mark Grunwald took with us, sitting down on that 8-page story and going through, this is what works, this is what doesn't work, and this is what doesn't work, and this is what doesn't work, for an 8-page story with a character, Dr. Druid, so far off the main path that it's kind of crazy. But that's the sort of care that he took, both in his responsibility to the characters and the people he was working with. But I don't remember many notes on this, and I can see the sort of editorial strong hand of not even going back to the writing team and asking for changes. There's one thing, as I was skim reading this in prep for this, somebody says something like "good grief," as an exclamation. Right? I would never write "good grief," even if I was doing Charlie Brown. Right? So like, as I'm wearing my Charlie Brown emoji shirt today, I would not write "good grief," and neither would Margaret. So that was obviously, we'd written who knows what, goddamn, or trying to be edgy. We'd written something, and then somebody came in and said, "I'll just write. We're never going to go back to them and give them the chance to correct it. They just put stuff in there." So any notes that might have affected things like that, they just Lilith ran with on their own and didn't feel a need.
How's the story look? Oh, great! It looks great, except that epic guy had to throw in a goddamn. We'll change that to good grief. Okay,
exactly, or something.
You keep your epic habits over there.
Every now and again, you'll skim read, some of the stuff, and especially in preparation for things like this, and I'll see like a baloney, or something like that I wrote something else, and somebody swapped it to that type of exclamation, which again I would never use, and I don't think any of the characters would ever use. But I would have gone back to the writer, and I would have said, "Hey, this doesn't work. Give me another thing." But I realized, talking with Howard, a couple years ago on a podcast, the Marvel mentality was just very much your editorial runs the show, and therefore we're just going to do whatever we want with your stuff, which is probably the right attitude. But I mean, coming out of Epic, I had a different mentality. I knew I was the authority on certain things, and I was the last stop on certain things. But because so much of it was creator owned, we had come with it from a different point of view of drawing the creative talent more into the discussion. We might still change things, at the end of the day, based upon what was best for the story of the book. So from Howard's point of view, that was, the absolute right way to go. So that I don't put that forward as any kind of like, my goodness, my expletive was so much better for this. It's the greatest expletive ever. They ruined it with a good grief, but it's just kind of when you read stuff like that, it's always like just weird, right? To me,
this is 1935.
Exactly.
Womp
gosh, Hawkeye. What will we do today?
Well, I think at this point, even by the time you get to your Daredevil run, it was starting to change already. But I think at this point, they're all like, "Oh, we're gonna have all these kids reading this." We can't be,
Yeah, kids.
Kids, yeah.
Yeah, and you never want anything that's too off the beam. I'm sure I didn't write goddamn either, but I didn't write good grief. So somewhere in between there is the truth, and maybe if you scratch the page hard enough, it's underneath it somewhere. It's like the people cut up in their Funkos thinking they're going to find a brain inside. It's like, oh look, I saw this on TikTok.
Bro, this just gives me such anxiety. He starts like opens a toy around me. I'm like, what are you doing? Leave it in the package.
I did that once at a convention. I bought these James Bond toys, like these ones from like the 60s or something, and I opened them up in front of the guy I just bought them from. I thought he was
his heart broke, bro.
Hey, pretty much. He was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" It's like, I want to see the little mechanism. I want to see how the pool table flips over. It's kind of like.
I took it out of the plastic, but I haven't opened the box.
Ooh, look at that! Nice.
Yeah, G.I. Joe is my current like obsession right now. So
really,
like the old toys and stuff, they're amazing.
Yeah,
they are.
Yeah,
Kung Fu Grip. I had the as a kid. I'm sure it's long gone. I had the Apollo space capsule, which was the best. It was like they would fit inside there. It was like amazing. So one of those primo toys of like, oh my god, this is so incredible, and then long gone.
3 weeks later.
Exactly.
We never know what we have at the time.
So many Barbies that I'm like, when I look at when I'm looking through the collector's guide, I had that one and I cut her hair.
The greatest tragedy I ever know. My father, as a child, had the first couple issues of Avengers, Spider-Man. I'm sure that my grandmother threw them out. I'm like, no,
go on. Yep.
Retirement fund, no.
Oh, that's just like I found some Tarzan and like Lost in Space comics, those Edward Rice Burroughs books and stuff from like the 60s. And they were in absolute atrocious condition. Yellow, torn, ink on the page. There was like a bullet hole through one, and I was just sad. I wanted to buy them, but they were in such terrible condition. There was no way to restore them. I was just so sad when I saw that.
Right. Yeah, it just kicked around completely.
I mean, that's just epic pieces of, pop culture we'll never get back. The Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone comics. And I was devastated.
Oh, wow. That sounded like
smoke. And I'm just like, why did people have to smoke so much back then?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
That's why that stuff's worth so much. Those comics didn't last, they did great.
Not at all.
Yeah. But do you back to this? I was gonna say, do you remember how long it was between you and Margaret like creating this issue and them like actually publishing it since it was a fill-in?
2 years later.
It was a stretch. I don't remember what it was. It wasn't years, but it was definitely one of those things of a few months at least.
Do they tell you, or does the comic just show up in your office? Like, here you
go. No, he taught. We Howard or Mark. Somebody said, "Oh, it's going to run," and so that was a thrill. But so it wasn't a surprise we didn't get our comics bundle and leafing through and say, wow, the greatest battle ever. I wonder what that is. Oh my gosh, I wrote it. The but it was definitely a little bit of a stretch of time, because I remember it sort of going back to being, making the sale wasn't suddenly, oh, the floodgates open, now they recognize our amazing talents, and we're ripe with success and assignments. We were definitely back to working the system, trying to sell another story in that way. But I do remember vaguely, Howard, probably saying, "Oh, it's going to run in whatever issue 38." So,
I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, yeah, back in the day, like, even if you just got a fill-in issue, they gave you something every month. These days, for, writing for the trades, it's like, oh, we're going to be late a month. You're not going to get your,
or
event
3
month. Yeah.
what do you mean that they don't have?
Well, again, like, if something's late, they're just going to be like, yeah, you're not getting an Avengers this month. That's how they do it now.
Really? There's not.
Yeah.
I don't follow enough things on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a fill-in this time. Yeah, I know if the team's late, it's late.
Really? So there's no maintenance of the schedule.
Yeah,
on a
it's
regular
been like
basis?
that for a couple of years.
And we'll
But
get
it might be pandemic related. Who knows?
I was gonna
That's
say,
when we really started noticing it. But yeah,
in these days, it might just be the supply chain. Yeah, it might not even be the creators. It might just be, we can't get
unless
it there.
it's that one person.
It might also be
DJ's here.
It might be. I don't know this for a fact. I wonder if there's a difference in the way things are printed. I mean, one of the reasons of maintaining the schedule was because I believe there were set things that had to run at set times. So
yeah.
I think that was part of the payment agreement with the printers and everything else. So if you missed that, you were going to eat that cost, or throw the whole larger print schedule off in that way, beyond a gap in the book.
Yeah.
Maybe today's digital printing, not electronic comics, but even just the fact that you can now send digital files over and such, and probably the way that they're printed, maybe that gives more latitude, and they don't have to worry about fill-in issues as much.
Again, I don't know if they want to, since everything gets collected in a trade now, if they want to break up that trade with a different creative team or something, even.
Maybe. I don't know. Who knows how much they think about that.
The model is very weird now. I just wish for a simpler time, honestly. And we're getting that. We're all going back to the 90s at this point. Everything's
Marvel's
back
doing
to
a
the
bunch
90s.
of 90s stuff. Yeah,
Stranger Things, the sequel, the next the next series in Stranger Things is going to be in the 90s, obviously. Just like that 90s show. So happy for that.
It's got to catch up somewhere. But yeah, those actors are getting too old. But it's yeah, I saw their not only are they doing the Midnight Suns with the U game, now there's a Midnight Suns with the U comic.
Yes.
So,
Naturally.
which has nothing to do that I could tell with Midnight Suns, except for I saw Blade on the cover and Ghost Rider, and but
90s.
whatever.
The difference between one letter, you're like, oh, we don't got to pay him anything. you.
That's essentially it, Phil. I mean, not that I'm sure they're planning against us in that way, but it's just, I guess there's probably I have no idea what it is.
Like a legal thing.
No, I don't think it's a legal thing. I think I don't know what it is actually. maybe it felt too male oriented with the Suns,
maybe.
or
yeah.
but that was I have no clue, because I don't know what Midnight Suns with a U means, because Midnight Sun with an O was, it was just. We were just playing off the fact that we were like the
Children of the Night, damn it!
Children of the Night, exactly. So, and 99% of those characters were male, but so.
Well, that's why they made it Lilith, and they gave you some Venom. So
I guess we'll see what shows up with it.
Yeah, the new ones, I don't even know if it's a lot of the same characters. Because I saw Wolverine on one cover.
No, it's that they threw in a bunch of other characters. There's Wolverine, there's Spider-Man.
Yeah, there's Iron Man even in there. So
right. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a video game.
Unless they're all somehow suddenly supernaturally powered Spider-Mans and Wolverines, which I guess is possible.
This has been done before, yeah. So.
Yeah, right.
But all right. And again, this West Coast Avengers, like the fill-in issues. Could you go to like any office at this point and be like, "Hey, can I,
Oh
is
yeah. Oh,
was everyone looking
absolutely.
for fill-in stuff?" Yeah.
We were scrabbling at the door of everybody, in a pathetic way, and that's how some
But
people
that's how you
made
have to make.
big.
That's how you had to make your bulk
Well,
back
yeah.
then.
I mean, and this is no, and he was a machine. He was a machine. Scott Lobdell was a machine. Scott Lobdell, famous writer of many of the X-Men titles and other things, but Scott was a far more efficient machine than say we were. He would show up with donuts and bagels and what do you got? 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 What do you you know, and even if it just becomes the wearing down of like, here, just go away. Here's here, go do 22 pages or something. Well, with then
That
what
should
you
keep them
also
busy for a while.
right, but then you also demonstrate if you're good at what you're doing, you demonstrate certain things to an editor. I can deliver on time. I did 22-page assignment. Here it is the next day. Whoa, I didn't think you'd do it that fast. But shows me you can write a 22-page story that holds up well in a day. So when I get into a crunch, or if you were to ever become my regular writer, or one of my regular creative people, it shows me that you can produce, and this isn't half bad. And you don't even own these characters, and you're treating them with respect, and so you're demonstrating certain things with that. But definitely, every office was they're in the same predicament, and
Yeah.
maybe they're not doing that today, but there's going to be that moment where even the best creative team may run into a situation that something fell to the side, or somebody got sick, or whatever, and so having that extra issue or two in the drawer, and being able to look ahead on the schedule and say, "Yep, we're falling behind. This is going to be a problem in March or something." And then I'm gonna pull out that fill-in plot, and I'm gonna get it. Now I'm gonna get it illustrated. So, or if you were being hyper efficient, you might just have planned out that entire fill-in issue and then gotten that ready to go, because there was a certain budget, I think, allowed as overage, where you could have a fill-in issue just ready to go. So that could be complete, lettered, inked, colored, rubber band snapped around it, and just set. So when you see you're ready to go, well, then 38 is going to become this. And
See,
then,
I like that peek behind the editorial curtain. I
Yes.
think people don't really appreciate editors as much as they should.
some editors can be horrible, but most editors are great.
It's a huge
I mean,
responsibility.
it's a huge. I mean, you're juggling. Your you if you're trying to help the people create a story, you've
And then
hired
be an
them.
advocate for them as well
Hey,
when
yes,
marketing
yes,
and the suits come knocking.
right. But you also have to be responsible to the larger schedule and keeping things on time and making sure people are doing the right things by the character. Somebody comes in and wants to do something that's completely off the beam for a character. Here, I'm going to have Daredevil rip the door off this cab, right? I think I might have told that story, where the artist came in and just it's great, terrific looking panel, great looking splash page or whatever it is. Daredevil doesn't have the strength to pull a door off a cab, but this artist didn't know anything, or didn't know that character at all. So to him, it was just another superhero. So why not? Big dramatic flourish. But an editor can either let something like that go because I'm lazy and like, oh, I don't really know Daredevil either, but
It looks
I'm
good.
going to move on. Yeah, it looks good, right? Or did we do things here that might have broken the rules of what Wonder Man does, or how Pym uses his particles, or Iron Man is going through all these things, and you're having him be too jokey, or something, So you gotta tone that down. That's not appropriate for the character, or fill my puns, right? Because that's easy writing, especially in the 80s and 90s. Everybody's got a quip, It's like, funny guy, Sully. I'm going to kill you last. Um, and but maybe that's not right. It's easy writing. It's easy to write. When I work, for all the time I've worked in advertising, since comics, there'd be a lot of writers who were great with a quip, right? They'd be great with a tagline, great with a headline, something catchy, right? The same type of thing, but it doesn't actually deliver on, say, the product story. In the same way here, quips may not deliver on the character, even in a fill-in. And as an editor, you have to maintain that responsibility of the character, that responsibility of the schedule, that responsibility of the creative team that you've got on there. And those may not be stacked in that order. Schedule may come first.
Yeah.
Creative team commitment may come last. Comically, I would always laugh sometimes to their face at editors who would complain about the creative team and say, well, so and so, they're ruining Fantastic Four. They're ruining it. You edit Fantastic Four, right? Yeah. You hired them, right? Yeah. They're ruining the book. You're the editor, right? It's this recursive logic of fix it. Fire them or tell them what they need to do to fix it. So, but sometimes there were editors who were just along for the ride.
What, they wouldn't give the team notes or anything, or just...
No, they would just bitch about it, and they would say that it's horrible. I hate what they're doing. I hate it. And maybe that was a named team. I don't know. Sometimes that was the case, but on the other hand, you also need to exercise responsibility and get them, on track. And that's that's why good editors are necessary. And anyone who bitches about editorial, I don't know if people do that. I'm sure they still do, but you're losing sight of an important part of your sounding board. Even if you are a creator or a creative team that has, say, a reputation and name value, and maybe you're the one who people are really buying the book, for. I can't think of an instance where you don't get some value out of a smart sounding board. Somebody who's on your side, who's reading it, who's looking at it, who's saying, objectively, I know you think these these captions or these word balloons tell your story. They don't, right? They're missing something. Or maybe the art, I can't read. I've been reading comics 50 years or 30 years or whatever. I don't know what these visuals mean. It's this jumble of panels, and I don't know where you want my eye to go. But if we flop these two images and rearrange these here, then the eye could track and follow it. And that's part of what editors do as well, that observation.
So no matter what, even if you have the greatest creative team ever, you should have notes for your team. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I think, yeah. I mean, as you said, there might not have been notes on this because it was just basically a hoo-ha action, in the great Tom DeFalco tradition, and which was famously if you ever have a chance to talk to Tom, you should. He's a great guy and great creator, and but that was always his editor. Needs more hoo-ha action, but yeah, I think editors, you want to give something back. And sometimes that's also the way to read the room. I worked with one creator who I will not name, but a fabulous creator and a great guy. But he had a psychological quirk where if you were really busy, say, as an editor, and he came in with 2 pages, of his job or whatever, which he usually did, and you were thanks, just leave it on the desk there. I'll look at it later. He would vanish for like 3 weeks, and where's the rest of the book? What's going on? But if you gave the time to pay attention and looked at those 2 pages and said, "This is great. This is working so well. I love what you're doing here." You gave him the attention. You get the rest of the book the next day. He just needed that kind of validation and that attention to sort of put into the rest of the job. He wasn't being malicious about it, but it was sort of just a psychological thing. So you learn that, I think, as an editor too, with certain people have a need there for levels of attention.
And like at that time, like how many books like would a Marvel editor be overseeing at one time?
Well, outside of the X-Men office, who was basically Batman before Batman.
right, and they might have been spread out, between a couple of sub offices as well. I think, I want to say 7 to 10. Probably, which is
Wow.
which is a fair amount of stuff. Think about that you're juggling not just the issues, right? That's seven
But
to ten
basically the
comics.
brand, yeah.
Well, the brand, but also think about now that's 4 times the number of people per issue, right? You've got a writer, you've got a penciler, you've got an inker. I'm sorry, that's 5. Letterer, colorist, right? So now you got 5 people times 7 that you're juggling. So you're juggling all those people. You're trying to keep them all coordinated. You're coordinating. Plot came in from Dan. Now that's got to go out to penciler X. So a lot of moving pieces you're keeping track of and continuing and reading it, making sure it's set up for success. So
And now we know why some writers become their own editors.
well, but that's I think I'm extremely judgmental of myself. You guys have heard me ding myself, and will continue to hear that. But uh, I, I cannot imagine a situation where a good editor is not going to give value back to even the best writer and artist on it. And so people who think they want to just be their own editors, you're going to miss something. You're going to miss something. I've been working on this thing for way too long now.
Nonsense. Everything's a work in progress until
everything's
it's
a
done.
work in progress. But I had written some sequences where I was being just really, I thought I was getting away from my old habits of overwriting things, and had kind of underwritten certain scenes, because I didn't think it needed anything. It just needed, the action was clear, the illustrations for the action were clear. I didn't need to fill it in with beats or whatever. But I had somebody read it. I had Greg Wright read it from an editorial point of view. Said be as judgmental as you always are, and really kind of rip into this. And so I was scared to actually show it to him. And his editorial vision was, you need to put more things in here. You actually need to kind of create some dialogue or caption beats, because what's happening is the reader is going to read this too fast. They're going to scan this page and take it in and go on to the next one, and you actually need to slow this down over here to get the effect that you want. You don't want this moment, the sequence of events that are happening, to be lost on the reader, and they will be. But in my head, I was like, I'm being efficient. I'm not overwriting. I'm letting the art carry the story. But in letting the art carry the story, it was losing some other effects. So that wasn't something I could recognize for myself, and that's why I think an editor is necessary. And if the writer who's editing himself is going to miss stuff like that.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So, yeah. So it's like even the best writer in the world, you need that fresh set of eyes, that fresh perspective. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. But no, I was asking you about the time, how long it took to get this issue published, because it's like, especially with a team book, it's like this thing has to have some kind of shelf life, because, they publish this 3 years from now. It might be like, oh, well, Tiger is not on the team anymore, or,
Iron Man's not on the
team. We're wearing a different suit of armor. Yeah.
Clearly, though, that was covered by the fabulous framing device.
That's true.
Oh, I remember when.
Remember when these people were on the team? Yeah,
exactly. Sort of like like Wonder Man with his beard and his own walker. I remember when the team was composed.
Gather round, children.
Yeah, exactly. So you always got that crutch to go with. I mean, or you do it in a much more elegant fashion. Like the last issue of Daredevil that me and Lee Weeks did. Before the revamp, and what did Tim Toohey, the editor, put into the credits box, I think, and something like a forgotten tale of Daredevil or something like that. So, and he didn't have to do anything, but because it was literally the last issue of before the pass off to Kevin Smith and Joe Quesada. So, but he decided to kind of take care of it in that fashion.
Oh, you should have just been like, writers, yeah, DG Chichester, Alan Smithy. I mean, just.
I liked that last issue. I had no
Oh
qualms
no,
with
no,
it.
no! I just it just as the inside gag,
You
just
know,
maybe get 2 paychecks. You never know.
yes, that's the thing of the pandemic, right? All the people working two,
Shekels,
three
man. You gotta
gigs.
give them their
Yeah, you know.
shekels.
Uh, I swear I had another question about this.
And it feels like you had fun with this issue, though. So
Oh
I think
yeah.
that's the most important thing is
I,
to
I,
just have
I think
fun.
yeah, I think absolutely. I think it was I cannot remember really the specifics of it, but I think just in general there's a sense of probably of
It's
of
such a great collection of characters, too.
yeah, no, it's definitely. I mean, that was fun. It was fun to work with a group. It was fun to work with real characters. I think there was probably trepidation of like, geez, this is our big breakthrough chance to work with things. Let's not screw it up. So I'm sure there was some sense of that, but I think once we got into it and had the even as cliched as the rock star villain and the multi-dimensional things and the goofiness of the Pym particle, and there were certainly plenty of times, especially back in the day, and I'd be at a convention and people would come up with this comic and like, what's this? What was the whole theory around the catcher's mitt? Why did you like do this? Because there's a ridiculous moment where Pym makes a giant sized catcher's mitt.
Because it was fun, damn it!
Yeah, pretty
Lighten
much.
up!
But I think we would have had a good time just kind of riffing and going. And there's no character development in this, right? It is pure action right from the get go.
Well, again, it kind of has
Sometimes
to
you
be.
need a break from it. Yeah, seriously.
Well, I mean, it kind of
Yeah.
has to be. Again, it's a one and done. You
Yep.
can't
Yep.
mess with the regular team story, and
Right. And just racing it forward. But I think it also reads as the sense of two people on the East Coast who haven't really traveled to California.
Exactly.
Has that sort of sense
It's a
of
very
like,
different culture.
California's weird. We don't really know anything about it, so we're just gonna write it like this.
Everybody's just rock stars and movie stars.
Rock stars, yeah, exactly. Here's the LA rocker as villain type thing. So
rock stars and their drugs and their interdimensional portals.
exactly. I would have written it much differently.
Well, LA is a hell math. Hashtag
Yeah.
trademark.
Yeah, there you go.
I live there. I can say that.
You've lived everywhere. All right.
Well, I'm from San Diego too, so take that one.
Oh, that's true. Oh, that's true. Yeah. That's where she was born. So just so I'm clear, so when you pitch like a fill-in issue, like you had to go, there wasn't like a master list of like, oh hey, we need a West Coast Avengers fill-in issue,
No.
we need a whatever fill-in issue.
No. There might have been something in the editorial meetings, where and I didn't usually go to the Marvel editorial meetings. A couple of times I did, but there were larger groups of editors, and they may have discussed needs for issues, as it were. We're running behind, I'm going to need a fill-in. Somebody might have said, oh, so and so's up, or I know somebody might be free, or have you thought about such and such, if they were being fair and trading secrets. But from a creator point of view, and this was the benefit of being inside the walls. Certainly, there was an advantage to that, of being able to, in between my day job, just going around and knocking on doors and saying, "Hey, we're trying to pitch something. You guys open for something?" And some offices be like, "Nope, all covered. Don't want, or didn't want us, or whatever."
Yeah.
And then chase us away. And then some would be like, yeah, maybe, grudgingly, here's something if you want to pitch for this. But you were still pitching, right? You were writing a 1 or 2 page idea and then proposing that, and then saying you get a go ahead, you get a no go. So, but it was a lot of that scratching at the doors to try to kind of crack through.
Yeah, that's why I just asked about the master list. I thought maybe it was just like, no one's pitched us a West Coast Avengers fill-in issue. We have 50 guys pitching a Spider-Man fill-in issue every
Or
day. So
X-Men,
we don't need
yeah.
we don't
Yeah.
need any Spider-Man or X-Men.
We're all full here.
Well, there was a strategy to that too. Certainly, I think that there, you would wisely sort of anticipate, or try to wisely anticipate where there might be more opportunity, because that the low hanging fruit, as it were, would be the places where people didn't really want to do it. Everybody wants to work on X-Men. Everybody wants to work on Spider-Man, even as a fill-in, because the fill-in would probably still sell really well.
Somewhere.
Well, it'll lead somewhere, or it's going to sell well.
And you're going to get eyes on your writing, yeah.
And you're going to get eyes on your writing. I mean, once I was more established, and then I was approached for some fill-in things. I mean, the 2 Wolverine issues I did, I was approached to do those. Okay, those were, Bob Harris called up, said Larry's needs a little break. Larry's got to catch up on some stuff. We need 2 issues. I was in the inner circle for all of like 15 seconds. Would you do this?
Sir.
And I used it wisely. But I benefited also from the fact that Wolverine sold really well, and I got some nice incentive checks for Wolverine for those 2 issues. Suddenly saying, Jesus, shit, Larry gets this every month, but and deserves it. Let's be clear. But so but you would be more likely to find that there was nobody pitching the Thundercat story, the Defenders of the Earth story, the licensed property office. What are they doing? If you're just trying to get yourself going, getting more of the experience of just writing a story to produce it, maybe you're getting back some editorial notes. Just because the editor is doing Thundercats doesn't mean that editor doesn't have good story sense and can give you, a sense that your story is pretty well paced, but your dialogue sucks. So your dialogue's really crackling, but your pacing doesn't, work, and you need to correct that. You're going to keep learning along the way. So from our point of view, we knew that we weren't going to get a lot of reception going after Spider-Man, but we would have more opportunity thinking that nobody's really pitching Thundercats. Nobody's really pitching Defenders of the Earth. Nobody's really pitching, West Coast Avengers. And Howard was on both Justice and West Coast Avengers, so I can't remember which one we pitched him first, but he was definitely a door in to, more regular work, even though, begrudgingly, I would say, stop bothering me, kids. And Howard's great.
Give the old Steve Urkel, you wore him down.
Yeah, kind of. We wore him down. I mean, Scott really wore people down, but we did some wearing down in our own right.
And would you say that's like
I love these behind the scenes things. Like the business of comics is, I think it's still so very secretive too. Like, especially like back in the day, people have their like vision of what it was, and then like, no. Let me tell you.
But no, I was going to ask, like, so would you say it's like a good creative exercise for writers to maybe write the character they've never really given that much thought to, or, over like the one, oh yeah, I think about Spider-Man every day, but it's just like, to hone your skills, maybe write a character that isn't your favorite and maybe you haven't given much thought to?
I think that's a great creative exercise. I think you're always challenging yourself when you do something like that, as long as you're not trying to suddenly write the Hulk as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I love Spider-Man. I know everything about Spider-Man. I'm going to go write a Hulk story where I'm going to treat him exactly like Spider-Man, because they just end up with cookie cutter approaches to things. But I think that is a strong creative way to break yourself into doing things differently, and one of the long-standing best creative tactics to try to make an impression on things was always to find the character that nobody cared about and come at that from a different direction and do something more with that. And famously, that can play out with a Sandman or a Swamp Thing, right? In that way, nobody cared about Swamp Thing until they did, and then they didn't. And then Alan Moore and Bissett and Totleben and characters come in, and nobody cared what they did with it. Nobody cared, right? I'm sure Karen Berger and company cared very much about the editorial, but there wasn't as much scrutiny. So suddenly you could tell a story about worms and reconstructions and all these things because nobody's really paying attention and figuring we're going to cancel this book in 8 issues because the sales are plummeting. But here's an open platform to kind of get in there and do what you want with it. But you definitely and as you move into things like these fill-in issues, I guess you could write them as whatever you want. But I know that the way Margaret and I approached it, even for this fill-in issue, we pulled all the Marvel Universe handbooks off the shelf, and we read up. Okay, what do we need to know about Wonder Man? What do we need to know about Iron Man? What do we need to know about Pym? What do we know about Pym particles? I mean, we did far more reading and research about these 20 odd fill-in pages than it warranted or probably came through on the page, but we wanted to feel informed, and it was in our nature to find something that would be the little bit thing that we play with. Right here, oh, Hawkeye's got these type of arrows. He very rarely uses them. Maybe this is something that we'll play out with. I don't know that we specifically did that here in this story, but that is sometimes where you find the little hook or the little trick that opens up in other things. I mean, I would do that with Daredevil on my own, later, and the whole thing about Fisk, taking the bloodied, billy clubs and saying, I'm going to store these away for a rainy day when I really want to torture him. That would become the jumping off point for me to say, well, whatever happened to those things, right? And I could have done more with them, but I did enough with them to make something of a story out of it. So,
I mean, it's not necessary to tell a good comic book story, but I kind of like that. Like, yeah, like the example you just mentioned, where like writers like actually like reference back to stuff other writers have done like years previous, and
mm-hmm.
Because these are supposed to be the same characters having the same adventures over all these decades, so it's like it kind of
right.
helps.
And it's an enriched universe, and it doesn't mean that it needs to become overly burdened, but you have a lot of things you can draw from. And I think sometimes doing a fill-in issue, that's maybe even a more fun way to do it, is you find something there that is not going to change continuity or affect continuity, but allow you to play off something that's already established. Maybe not everybody knows it's established, but
the ones that do appreciate it.
Yeah. and then you can say to editorial, well, we're not saying anything that's not already real, even if you don't know about it. But
and probably the tip to give to all up and comers is probably like you were talking before about if you can make you take a lower tier book and make it like a big thing like Alan Moore did with Swamp Thing. It's like you could sell a million issues of Spider-Man, who can't, but take it, you could sell 500,000 copies of Swamp Thing. Okay, kid, you got a job, you got
right,
employment.
And you have to strike a balance between the two if you're looking to break into one of the bigger companies and their properties. Where does it come through? Picking the most obscure character that you're so in love with, and you may have the best idea ever for it, is probably too far afield in one way, because the first reaction is going to be, well, why would we want to resurrect so and so? Maybe later on they'll do it. I remember pitching a Human Target, series 1,000 years ago.
God bless your soul.
And Archie was like, Archie Goodwin, was
you
like,
were 2 decades too soon.
Well, kind of, he's sort of, and he's like, well, who cares about that, or why would we want to bring that character back? It doesn't make any sense. But I'm not going to dispute Archie's logic, but that's way out there, or was, at that time. But if you strategically were sort of to look at different offices and say, well, Phil's got 5 titles or 7 titles that he edits on a regular basis. 4 of them are really successful. 3 look like they're kind of stumbling along and maybe aren't as strong. Maybe and I know Phil's going to be at a convention. I'll go and I'll pitch this to Phil, or in this way, or I'll contact him by email or whatever and say, here maybe there's an in this way, because that's a character that seems like it's on its descent, or stumbling along, and maybe he's looking for an edge here. But it's already being published, so it's got some it's got something going on with it, as opposed to kind of just having to drag it out of nowhere and run with it.
I mean, this seems to be the era, if you have a pitch for some of these lesser known characters, because I mean, that seems to be Tom King's niche right now. I mean, he did that 12-issue Mr. Miracle series, then he did an Adam Strange. Now he's doing Human Target.
Yeah, right, exactly. And now he's got a track record, I guess, of doing that. So maybe that becomes his thing, and that becomes something for DC, PR to be able to play up, more. Right, he's got a track record of being able to take somewhat more obscure characters and find a fresh take, and that becomes a charge in its own right.
But if you go to the Marvel side, I don't know is it kind of like a little bit of a trap these days, where it's like, I don't know about if this character's not that well known, but they're not going to show up in a TV show or movie anytime soon. I don't know if we want to take a chance on this, lesser known character.
Hard to say, right? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know I have no clue what the editorial.
Yeah, we're back to 1 billion X books again, so
So what's the editorial balance there? And yet there's no X-Men movies, so that's not tied into that clearly. It's just tied into the fact it's X-Men, and they're doing well with that. So, but it's always a matter of. That might be a way in for creators if they get to conventions and they meet editors, if there are editors at that shows, to just ask about, are there fill-in issues? Like you said, it doesn't seem like there might be on the schedules, but I can't imagine there's
well, everybody's working so damn hard with 8 books, so there's got to be a crack somewhere in the machine. Like literally all the big books, and then like all the creators are just literally like the same, like 6 people on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be something. I would just think from just a sheer publishing schedule point of view, I would think there's got to be a need for having that fill-in issue at the ready, but then maybe the rest of it's running so efficiently, or maybe they don't need to worry about, as I said, the gaps in the publishing schedule for some reason as they used to.
I think at Marvel now you could pitch like 90s miniseries, because it seems like they're doing a lot of the 90s
like,
stuff.
Go! 90s are back. We know, Phil. We know.
Maybe I could go in and say, listen, the idea is Midnight Suns with an O instead of a U. What do you think? That's all I have to say. It's just.
I know what I want to see, a miniseries by D.G. Chichester set in that Daredevil 90s period. That's what I want. I mean, come on, the dude's getting more TV shows, so come on.
That's right.
They're definitely going to need a flashback season.
Or hell, let him fill it. The king of the fill-in issues here. Let him fill in for Chip, because I mean, Chip's got so much stuff going on now. Daredevil, he's going to be writing Batman. He's got his own creator stuff going on. I mean,
there was a Defiler Daredevil story. At some point, that was always going to be the case. I'm shocked.
That untold tale that we finally ready to tell
it. The untold story.
And just for nostalgia's sake, you have to put on the cover Daredevil's greatest battle.
Greatest battle ever, right?
You thought the Kingpin was bad.
With a little 90s, Wonder Man, enough said, coming out of it.
Yes. All right. Any other questions for this man, Lilith Hellfire?
No, sir. Let him have his great Saturday.
Well, thank you, guys. Always a great way to start the Saturday with the two of you. Thank you again. And what's my assignment for next time out? Do you have it?
Oh, the first assignment is to have safe travels.
Well, thank you. Yes, yeah. Hopefully.
But yes, next month, the Punisher Captain America story, Blood and Glory.
Yeah, I got a lot of work to do on that one, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. Wow, that's a good bookend to this, because that would be the last thing that me and Margaret wrote together. And
really?
And so that would be and there, a lot of history behind that one. So that's a fun one. We'll definitely chew the microphone on that.
Captain America and Mr. Competent himself, Frank Castle.
I don't know which one I was rooting for the least, honestly.
Well, we'll talk all about that. I'll see if I can find my full set of How to Kill and the Anarchist Cookbook, which were kind of my Bibles for writing all the castle scenes.
Nice.
Yay. All right. Before we go, sir, tell everyone about the newsletter and anything else you have going on.
Newsletter.
Terrificon too. Yeah.
Yep. I was going to say it's storymaze.substack.com is my newsletter, and if you're in the Northeast area, the Connecticut area specifically, I'll be at Terrificon at the end of July. So I'll be there for Saturday and Sunday at the show. Please, if you're in the area, drop by and say hello in person.
And bring a comic.
Bring a comic, exactly.
Bring West Coast Avengers 38. All right. Again, thank you, sir, so much for.
Thank you, guys. This was fun. I wasn't sure we were going to be able to fill the time with this, but
you should know this by now.
You know what?
All right. Well, good grief, I say to you both, and have.
Best ending yet.
Catch you later.
Thank you, sir.
Be good, guys. Bye-bye.